Lesson 2, Installation and Initial Configuration. A new feature with TSM version 6.3 is the prerequisite checker. You launch the prerequisite checker from your server installation directory, click prereccheck.exe and launch this wizard. Tivoli Storage Manager will then go out and verify your system information versus the requirements. As you can see here, we have a warning on available memory. This is because the recommended memory is 12 gigs, 16 if you're running data deduplication, and our system only has 8. This is your lab system, and since we're only backing up very small amounts of data, we can get by with the 8 gigs of memory. You'll also notice that it created a directory for you. This would be the C Program Files Tivoli TSM server. This is the directory that TSM uses by default for your server options and files. Next, we're going to start the actual installation of the server. We do this by clicking the install.exe in the installation directory, or you can also use a command line installation and follow your installation guide for your platform. For our lab, we're going to be using the Install Anywhere wizard for Microsoft Windows. Since we have an extended edition license, we're going to select IBM Tivoli Storage Manager Extended Edition. The other options are your basic or IBM Tivoli Storage Manager, IBM System Storage Archive Manager, and the IBM Tivoli Storage Manager for storage area networks. You just follow the steps for the wizard, accept the license agreements. You'll be prompted to whether or not you're going to use LAN-free or library sharing. Now, these are features only available with the Extended Edition. For our lab, we will not use either. The next wizard screen is selecting the directory and the components. By default, you'll notice our directory path for Windows is C Program Files Tivoli TSM. And we're going to select the Tivoli Storage Manager server and the Tivoli Storage Manager license to be installed. If you had a tape library, you would also click Tivoli Storage Manager devices. The installation takes about 30 minutes. It's very quick. Prior to starting it, you will get a review for your pre-installation summary. If you've encountered any problems, if you get any return code other than 0, you'll need to check your installation logs to see what went wrong. Our next step is to prepare for configuring the server instance. You'll be creating some additional directories. You'll need an instance directory, database directory, recovery log directories. Your database and recovery log directories need to be empty. These directories need to be owned by a user ID that owns the server instance. You'll use this ID when you create your server instance. In the notes underneath the slide in your student guide are the steps you use to create your user ID, assign the groups, and create your directories. You'll also be doing this in your lab exercises. To start the configuration, you'll click the Configuration wizard. You can go to your IBM Tivoli Storage Manager directory and click the DSM ICFGX file in the server directory, or you can also go to, for Windows, Start All Programs Tivoli Storage Manager, and you'll see a listing for the Configuration wizard. This again is another Install Anywhere wizard that has the breadcrumb trail along the left to tell you where you are in the process, and the main window to tell you what's going on. So after we have created a user ID that owns the instance, this is different than the TSM admin ID. We have our instance owner ID, empty directories for our database and recovery logs, as well as an instance directory. Then we start the configuration by clicking DSM ICFGX. The first screen is specifying your instance user ID that you've just created. We're calling our instance Server 1. Because we can have more than one server on a physical system, we'll start out with Server 1. Our user ID, the one we just created, we're using db2user1 and enter our password. You can use the default location, which we're going to do, or click Choose and browse to a different location. Now we're going to input our database directory. In our lab environment, we have one directory. We put the information here after clicking the radio button for the database directories are listed below. You could also point to a file that listed all the directories. On the next screen, we're going to put the active log, archive log, and our two optional logs. Here we're going to either browse to or type in the directory path for our new empty logs. By default, the size is going to be 16 gigabytes. For our lab environment, that's too big. So we're going to use 2. In real life, what we're hearing from the field is 32 is a really good place to start. We'll talk more about the sizing of the logs and the database a little bit later. You'll notice that we have our logs placed on different drives and a different drive than our database. We're also using the 2 optional logs because having a mirror is very handy if something goes wrong with the activity log, and your archive log failover, you'll find out when we talk about backing up your database, is also a really good idea. Basically, if your archive log fills up, it will stop the TSM server. Having a failover gives you a little extra room to grow. Here's where we're going to give our server a name. By default, it's going to pick up the machine name, the physical host's name. We've added an underscore server 1. This is where we input the TSM admin credentials. We're using admin 1 just as an easy ID. We're going to accept the default communication. By default, the client and server use port 1500. The default communication method is TCP/IP unless you specify otherwise. Just a tip, if you're going to be using shared memory, the server and client need to be on the same physical system. This is a copy of your server options file, or dsmserv.opt. This is created when you do your configuration. Your communication method is TCP/IP. Your communication port 1500. There are 2 files that you'll be working with later called device configuration and volume history. And in your options file, you're giving them the location that you want the output to go. Then you see our active log size and all the directory paths. When we get into more about the database, you'll see how easy it is to change size or location of your activity logs. Your server instance should start automatically, but if for some reason you need to restart the server, this is what you'd use. For Windows, dsmserv -K and then the server key, which is your Windows registry key. For AIX, Linux, and other Unix, dsmserv -I and then the instance directory. At any time that you need to stop the TSM, anytime you'd need to stop the TSM server, issue the halt command from your TSM admin command line. Halt will stop the server. One of the first steps you should take is to register your license. The register license command is register license file equal tsmee.lic. This is registering your extended edition license. To help you with your licensing, you can use the PVU calculator. This lets you know the number of server and client devices you have and the PVU per server. So you have your first server installed, your first instance. If you need to install another instance, you can do so either with the Administration Center or use the wizard like you just did and create another instance, or you can manually use the command line and configure a new instance. Once you have your Administration Center installed, you can use the Manage Servers tab to create a new instance. This is after you have your first instance defined already. And to manually configure a server, you can use the wizard, issue the DSM format command that would format your database and recovery log, then you would start your server and register your license. This is the command line example for manually formatting your database and recovery log. So this is if you're not going to be using the wizard. For more information, refer to the installation guide for your platform. If you ever need to uninstall Tivoli Storage Manager, you can do so with the wizard. Refer to the notes under the slide in your student guide for more information on removing your server instance. Also, the installation guide will have more information. When you uninstall Tivoli Storage Manager using the wizard, you'll get a window that shows you what components have been removed. Now, what we've shown you is how to use the wizard with Windows. If you're using AIX, you'll be using a similar wizard to install your components. Again, we have installation guides by platform for all of the TSM servers.